Let's be honest here, fighting games are not known for their stories. This is fact, and unfortunately, for a very good reason. Hell, you're lucky to even get any in-game most of the time. And when there is any, it's usually just an arcade ending of some kind. Ignoring the fact that it's the same basic setup 90% of the time. Tell me if you've heard this one before. There's a good old-fashioned tournament of some kind. Not that I really blame them for that setup, mind you, since it's an easy way to make the cast fight, and on the rarest of rare occasions, we'll get an actual mode dedicated to stories. 99% of the time, it's a glorified arcade ladder that tends to suffer from blatant subpar writing, but take what you can get, I guess. Beggars can't be choosers here. Obviously, exceptions occur, such as the original Melty Blood and its expansion disc, but it's a general rule that's easy to follow. Today, however, we're going to be talking about a boss from one of those exceptions, and in fact, I consider this exception to be the greatest fighting game series ever made. Arc System Works' BlazBlue is such an anomaly from its very first entry, and I would absolutely love to, and plan to discuss as a whole somewhere down the line. The sheer amount of detail, love, and passion that were placed into the four mainline games is on a whole nother level, especially when compared to way more popular games in the genre. And it makes me so sad that the series has been pushed to the side nowadays. But as much as I'd love to review the games in full, today once again I'm just here to focus on a specific boss from the first game. If you know her, you probably hate fighting her. Nu-13, or just Nu-13, like most sane people call her, is probably the most difficult to talk about boss so far. Where do I fucking start? Because due to the way Calamity Trigger is, there is essentially two versions of the fight to talk about. We have the usual arcade mode, which would give me more than enough, but there's also story mode, and oh boy, that is a tall order. I was originally only going to go over the arcade fight, but since I'm a crazy person, and the story mode fight has even more to add, I'm doing both. God save me. Calamity Trigger's arcade mode sets itself apart from the pack almost immediately from the moment you select your character, as the game does a little splash screen to fill you in on the bare basics of your character's backstory. It's not much, but it'll tell you what you need to know to get started, and throughout the game there's actually scripted fights that come with full-on cutscenes, showing the characters interacting with each other before and after fights. Once the player gets through the first 8 fights, they're confronted with the absolute legend. After getting their ass kicked for a bit, the player will eventually defeat him and watch him get teleported away, and we'll have to fight the true boss of arcade mode. After watching this admittedly cool stage transition, that they totally don't play a bunch during story mode as well to get their money's worth out of. By the way, this stage is so fucking cool. Like, Shield Gate is definitely one of my favorite stages in the series. And Awakening the Chaos is our god-tier final boss theme, nailing the atmosphere of this fight so well. With the mysterious sounding choir playing for the first minute while the pre-battle cutscene plays out, before exploding into electric guitars when the fight actually starts, and the choir during the chorus section of the song not only screams this is a climax, but really hammers in the fact that you're dealing with something dangerous here. Which you are. Nu-13 is a scary opponent, and in my opinion the queen of zoners. Nobody comes close, besides another boss later in the series. For all of you who've only played Central Fiction wondering why I'm giving a bottom tier such a prestigious title, that's because she's only bottom tier in Central Fiction due to the devs specifically hunting her down and putting several bullets into her knees and at her elbows for good measure, before running her over with a tank. This wasn't an accident, it was murder, because in this game and Chronoplasm Extend, she's stupid good, with everything a zoner could ever want, including a projectile mapped to a button that can cover every possible approach in the form of her drive sword summoner, full screen combos, as well as several ways to lock the enemy down, including a field to limit the opponent's movement that can also launch the opponent if her hands hit them, and Spike Chaser is one of the most degenerate moves I have ever seen. So she can proceed, after doing all this, to run full screen high-low mix-ups due to her drive having a tracking overhead and Sickle Storm being a full screen load that can be summoned in front or behind the opponent. Oh right, her movement is also great! With a teleport dash that can be done after certain moves, and one of the best backdashes I have ever seen in a fighting game. But back to the lockdown bit. She also has one of the most ridiculous supers I have ever seen in the form of Legacy Edge. This might as well be an instant I win button in neutral. If you don't interrupt it somehow, you can't do anything once it comes out, because there's no way to dodge this without just being in the dead zone right when it starts, period. Also, Calamity's sword is a high risk, high reward reversal super, which is a combo starter on hit. Yeah, this character is ridiculous. Important to note, that's the normal version of the character. Unlimited Nu-13, which is the boss form, takes all this up to 11. With double the projectiles, Spike Chaser going full screen without charging it, and Legacy Edge lasting an obscene amount of time. And Calamity Sword not only becoming an overhead, but summoning 4 swords instead of 1. Okay, beating the Toho game does net you your arcade ending, which, interestingly enough, takes place before the events of the game. Which is a neat change of pace compared to most games, although it is very strange. I wonder why that is. But you might be looking at me like, okay, what makes this so special? Sure, the stage and song are really cool, but she's just a robot girl. We're getting there, okay? Don't worry. Yeah, most of the time she's just a robot girl who monetarily boots up and states what she's doing like someone forgot to remove the console output lines for debugging. But occasionally you get something interesting like her asking, what is life, upon her victory. But then you decide to play as Ragna, where she becomes an entirely different person.
You gotta be kidding me. I guess I was too late.
Loading. 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 Complete.
It's Ragna! I haven't seen you in so long!
If anything, it's mood whiplash if you've played any of the other characters first, and the conversation only gets more and more interesting as it goes on. With Nu happily greeting Ragna, and trying to have a relatively happy-go-lucky conversation. Well, as happy-go-lucky of a conversation you can have while you bring up the fact that the person you're talking to hurt you, and mentioning massive blood loss. You know, no big deal, totally normal. Even showing concern for him when it comes to his injuries from his fight with Ragnar responding with about as much enthusiasm as someone who just realized they have to babysit a hyperactive 5-year-old after having a shit day at work, before announcing his intentions.
Are you okay? Who did that to you?
Shut up. That face, that voice. Don't you dare talk to me. I'm here to destroy you, understand?
You're here to murder this girl. Although based off the way he talks about it, he doesn't even consider it killing. Nothing more than destroying an object, and the fight itself continues this trend with Nu saying things like,
It hurts, Ragna.
even asking,
Do you hate me, Ragna?
and
Why do you hate me that much?
throughout the fight, which as you would expect gets extremely uncomfortable fast. Like, what was her crime? All she seems to want to do is be with him, yet he just lashes out. Major props to the voice cast on this one. Christina V and Patrick Seitz fucking nail their characters here. Really makes you wonder who the villain of the story is. Wait, my imaginary conversation partner says, this is just Dizzy all over again, but more on the nose. Is that so? I mean, you're right, but BlazBlue does something different. Unlike Guilty Gear X, BlazBlue has all this setup and sets your expectations before turning them into something horrible right before your eyes.
Dead Spike!
Finish!
Damn it, why?
It's impossible, you know. No one can change what happened. This is destiny. You and I are supposed to be together. It's a story that can't be rewritten.
What the hell are you talking about? I don't need anyone telling me what to do!
And we fall into each other's arms. Aww, this is so romantic.
Let go of me, you bastard!
Your life and my life are the same. If I'm still alive, you definitely won't die. The same goes for me, too. You can't fight your feelings, Ragna. We're going to be together. Forever and always.
Stop it. I'm not.
Alright, let's go destroy everything now. Destroy this whole terrible, awful excuse for a world. Okay? Ragna?
In one fell swoop, the game takes everything you knew about the situation and turns it on its head. Nobody was truly innocent in this fight. Honestly, no matter how many times I see this scene, it makes me uncomfortable. And that's a massive achievement, because I can handle quite a bit. Just the dead silence beside some machine humming alone as she explains her intentions makes this an extremely chilling scene. And that's not even going into the once again great voice performance and dialogue. I will never stop praising BlazBlue's writing for making a character this fucked up, and I am not the only one. Everyone I know finds Nu extremely uncomfortable, and that's how you know they did a damn good job, to put it lightly. This alone puts her up pretty damn high on my fighting game boss tier list, which I should probably make. Honestly above Dizzy even. But as mentioned before, we're not done. Oh boy, are we not done. According to Nu, this isn't the first time they fought, and Ragna confirms it's actually the third time. Which brings up another thing I didn't realize until recently. Nu's fighting style is a perfect counter to Ragna's. Let me explain. Anyone who's played Ragna the Blood Edge for more than 5 minutes can tell you that fighting Zoner sucks. He almost completely lacks a move to bypass projectiles, only obtaining projectile invulnerability on his Carnage Scissors super in later games. Take this with this technically being Ragna vs Nu Round 3 in Universe, and it's honestly not entirely out of the question that Nu developed her fighting style specifically to counter Ragna in order to achieve her goal. I know that may sound like a bit of a reach, and I would actually agree, but this is fucking BlazBlue, which probably has the most detailed-filled, in-depth characters in lore and fighting game history. So it would not shock me if this was the case in the slightest. Now, there's another interesting thing about Calamity Trigger. The bosses are playable as normal characters, with their own cutscenes and arcade endings exclusive to them, and Nu's is probably the weirdest route in the game, as she only has 2 fights with dialogue, and her final fight is actually Rachel Alucard, because, you know, she won't fight herself. The first one is with Taokaka, whose stupidity causes Nu to malfunction before switching to battle mode out of a lack of ideas of what else to do, after completing termination of the cat thing. Nu finds herself with Rachel, who says something pretty interesting.
Status unknown. Existence unknown. Current condition. Obstacle identified. Shifting to recovery mode. Failed.
So, this is your wish. Playing with a free-spirited cat and taking a walk under the clear sky. A pathetic doll with dreams that will never come true.
Pay attention to what Rachel claims here. This is a dream. But not just any dream. One that will never come true. And the arcade ending reveals that this is in fact a dream, with Nu simply sleeping within a void, calling out to Ragna. Who, by the way, fun fact, cannot show up as an encounter. In fact, from my testing, because I've played this game way too fucking much, it is completely impossible to fight Ragnar normally in arcade mode. He either has to make a story appearance, or you have to trigger his secret boss fight for him to appear. Now isn't that interesting, but why would that be the case? And what's the deal with Nu's dream, and what's going on with Ragnar's arcade ending having Nu claim, "This is destiny, you and I are meant to be together," and have the name The End of Time? And why does every other arcade ending begin with the screen whiting out before going to a flashback? If there's one thing this does, it makes you ask interesting questions, and well, to answer that, we have to do something I'm admittedly a little scared to do. We have to talk a bit about Calamity Trigger's story mode.